So welcome everyone to this video with myself, Chandra, and Britta. We are so excited to do this video today about a topic I know Britta is incredibly passionate about, and I am as well, and something that's really, really near and dear to our hearts, which is this topic of how necessary it is to foster a deeper spiritual connection, especially in these times. It's real juicy. So get ready, strap on in. We're excited. And so maybe first, Britta, you could speak to with this topic of deepening spiritual connection in these challenging times. Who is this video for?
Yeah, so this video is for you if you are looking for that, if you're looking for a deeper spiritual connection, if you might be floundering a bit, maybe you already have a spiritual practice and it's kind of been dragging, or maybe you feel uninspired about your spiritual path or your practice, or maybe you're curious and you're getting the sense that in these times, with the coronavirus and the political and racial unrest and financial difficulties and uncertainties and everything that's been happening for 8 or 9 months now, ongoingly, and the holidays coming up and everything, you may be sensing, I need something deeper I need to go somewhere deeper than where I've gone before. I need a stronger connection to something greater. What we at core, we call that grace. You could also call that God or spirit or the mystery, whatever word you use for that, but it's something that is greater than all this and deeper than all this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's from what you just said, it's almost with all of these challenging times, it's for people that are ready to anchor into something deeper. You're okay, I do need to be tethered right now in my spiritual connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, what have you been noticing, when we don't have that deeper spiritual connection, what have you been noticing of what people have been struggling with? How does that show up in people's lives or in your own?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to share is that I just had an experience of that 2 days ago on Wednesday morning. And I don't have a lot of those experiences of really feeling disconnected spiritually, but I felt like I was floundering. I was deeply unhappy and hopeless. There was a hopeless feeling of this daunting task of making this world a better place. And I was like, what is going on with me? It was really, really painful. It hurts. And there's all of a sudden the optimism and the basic belief in goodness sort of dwindles. And I was in that state for maybe 2 hours, and that was almost unbearable. And then I realized, my God, a lot of the time people are in this for days and weeks and months, which is the state of that is almost like a deep anxiety or anxiousness and mistrust and fighting life and thinking this should be different and this shouldn't be happening. And that creates so much, unease inside of oneself, right? And pessimism. It just felt like a sinking feeling in my stomach. And I do know that's going on for a lot of people. A lot of my family, my clients, my students, just people that I know of are experiencing this. And I can't even, if you're someone like that who walks around like this for days, I admire you. I really felt, wow, this is so hard to feel like this, to feel so disconnected. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if people are feeling this way of maybe that just perpetual swirling anxiety in life, or fighting what is, maybe those thoughts are going through your head of I just wish it wasn't this way. F COVID, why does it have to be this way, or whatever else is happening? If there's that fighting, that pushing, or if there's that just sense of feeling lost, adrift, or numb, or hopeless.
Yeah.
Right. I felt that at times of what's even, what am I doing? How am I going to get through this? Those thoughts. And I hear,
numb. right? Or numb. It could also be that you've been noticing, I'm just kind of functioning. I can make it through the day.
Yeah.
Then at night, I watch a lot of Netflix. And then I start the day again. Or maybe I'm drinking more than I used to drink, or, just distracting myself much more.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain kind of numbness that also sometimes it doesn't feel that terrible, but it certainly is not connected. Yeah.
And so if people are feeling that way, right, or even a smidge, and they have that like longing, they know that there's that pull in them, that there has to be something more or something deeper. Like, what is it that they can do?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that are really important right now is doubling down on our spiritual practice. Like whatever we know helps us connect spiritually, to double down on it. There's this beautiful saying by Gandhi, like if I'm having a really hard day, I need to meditate 2 hours instead of one, especially if I'm really busy. So I love that. It's the opposite of what we do, right? We get busy, we get distracted, we get miserable, and then we drop everything, and don't even remember to meditate or pray or go out in nature where we commune with the natural world, or whatever it is that really helps us connect spiritually. And and kind of, there's like this, the world goes from gray to totally vibrant and colorful when we're spiritually connected. And it's like, yes, right? And there's a yes to the gift of life. And whatever the practices are that get us there, we need to double down on them. And stop just seeing this as a sort of hobby that I dwindle in and out of. And I kind of like it, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but there's like, let's commit to this. Let's go for it, right? And let's do it together. That's another thing I think is really important, that it's hard to do everything alone right now. And we need to be together and inspire each other and hold each other accountable and hold each other's processes, because people are going through a lot.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that just so deeply resonated. And so I'm curious, like within that realm, like why is it then, I know that you've said this in the past, but why is it then hard to do this by ourselves, to double down on our spiritual practice, to, like really dig into grace, like, and those practices that we know open us up to something greater? Like, why is it hard to do that by ourselves?
That might just be the $1 million question, Chandra. Like, I think there's a lot of things. I think that the more anxious we get or distracted, the more we get into our survivor self. And the survivor self is that part of us that feels like I'm all alone against a hostile world and I got to make it. I got to, and it's a tightness in the survivor self. Like I got to do it myself. So it gets so tight that it doesn't remember. We don't remember to open to help, to assistance, to the greater good. We just kind of buckle down. And that's definitely my survivor self. It's like, I'll do it, I'll push through it. And then I'm like, oh, how about grace? How about collaborating with grace, right? It just disappears. I don't think about it, like when I'm get in that, right? So it's this function of the ego structure is not to open to grace, right? And then not to trust anything or anybody, right? But to will it through by ourselves, and not to be vulnerable, to admit that we need help, and all these things that are keeping us from that. And I don't think it's that people are undisciplined, right? But I think people lack the inspiration for the discipline and the motivation for the discipline. Like we can do anything for love, right? We'll do anything for the greater good if we're alive, and if we have a why for it, if we have a motivation for it and are inspired. So, and I think we're interdependent. We need each other. Most of us are not hermits, there's a few people that are meant to live a hermit life and a sort of monk hermit life, but most of us we need community.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, so do I. Otherwise, yeah, these spiritual practices, I just notice actually my survivor self takes it and twists it. It's like, well, fine, I'll meditate. Okay, I'll meditate more today. That's what Gandhi said. But it's not from that place of like,
That's good.
like trusting and openness. It's from this place of actually really for me, like fighting what is. I'm trying to still control my world around me or control my reactions instead of actually really surrendering to something deeper, greater, and letting myself be taken, which is, I almost feel like, the purpose of these spiritual practices. So, and I know for me too, a big thing has been having a guide. Like, I am so grateful, Britta. Like, just so everyone knows, like, Britta has been my guide, my teacher, my mentor, like, for years and years and years, not only as a facilitator, but also in my spiritual journey. And I am so grateful that I had someone that was further, like, many years, 20 years further along down the journey than I was. Because I remember when I first started working with her more spiritually, like through the Heartcore program, at the time I was feeling so numb spiritually. It's like I just felt empty and stuck and was like, there has to be more. Like, I missed my like honeymoon phases of grace where I was like, oh, yay, I can trust. It's all good. Like, grace has got my back. But it's like, instead, I just felt like I was constantly going through the motions and stuck. And I didn't feel that aliveness or that real deep connection, like physically in my body or my heart. And I just remember I was like, I have to work with Britta on this. Like, she's gone through these periods. She knows these stale, these numb places, and she has consistently brought herself, or consistently learned from other amazing spiritual guides and like gone so deep on her own journey that I knew she could hold me in mine, that she could shine a light on mine and be like, honey, this is something to see right here. I just think that's what's so important too, right? Is not trying to go through the spiritual journey alone. Because again, I know for me, it's like my ego, my survivor self will twist that and I'll stay stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about this before. You were like, in my eyes, a poster child for this, right? Like may I talk about what's happening for you?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Chandra's pregnant, and she's, which is such a grace, and she's very happy about it. And you've been struggling with nausea for now, what, 7 weeks?
Yeah.
Lots and lots of nausea, right? And so what I think is amazing, what I saw in these last 7 weeks is how much you trust in grace. Like, it's incredible. Like, I mean, I feel so inspired by how of course you've tried all sorts of ways to help you not to feel so nauseous, right? And yet many times when I talk to you and I check in with you regularly, you're like, yep, I'm still nauseous and it's okay. There's many times you said, and it's okay, I will get through this. I can do hard things, like I can do this, right? Because there's I feel in you a basic trust in life and in God and in grace and in you, like you as a beautiful soul on the path, that somehow this is okay, it's going to be okay. And that is so, yeah, it's so beautiful to have had some part in that journey with you, to remind you of that. You always had that. It just needed to be solidified, and you needed someone to remind you and maybe guide you into where you can find this. Yeah. More in a more deeper, conscious way.
Yeah. Thank you, Britta.
Yeah.
I think, it's so funny because yesterday I literally had one of the worst days of my nausea. And today I am feeling better, but it was one of these things of like, I was really feeling stuck yesterday too. But it's like, of course, even today I get this reflection and that like anchors me like, yes, oh yeah, there is trust here. We've got this. And that there is like the trust that something beautiful is happening too. It's like, yes, I am suffering. And I also trust in the inherent goodness of what is happening too. And again, that's come literally because of my time with the Heartcore program. I'll just speak to that. Like, there is this innate ability in me, or like, right, there's that foundation of trust, but there's a big part of me that tries to fight life, control life, like more so strive and effort on my own. Like I feel like I have to go through things on my own. And it was through Britta's guidance that I got to see all of those things that blocked me from trust. And then from that, like deepen in my connection to grace and to call on that. So now, right, it's not even always conscious that that trust is there, but it's like deeper in my bones. Like I know this, I know I'm held. I know if suffering is to continue, I am held. Like, and I trust that. And again, that's because I had a guide, and someone supporting me in this journey. So thank you. I like bow to you and thank you.
And can I just say one more thing, honey? Like that, there is this, and I've had many, many teachers, by the way. Like I had many, I would not be where I am without all my teachers, so I can't even name them all. But one of them is Adya Shanti, and he says this beautiful thing, like, and this is the result of the deep spiritual journey. It's like, I know that all is well, even when it seems unbelievably unwell, which sometimes it does right now, right? It doesn't seem well at all. And yet there's a deep knowing that all is well, I'm held. Love is what permeates this universe. The loving goodness that created all this got us all, right? And got me. And even if the worst should happen, right? It's going to be okay. Somewhere it will be okay. And this is not spiritual bypassing, by the way, for you people that might think that. It goes much, because spiritual bypassing I'm using when I'm actually not deeply spiritual. When I'm just using spirituality, when I'm a spiritual bypasser, I'm using spiritual concepts to not feel what's happening, to be superficial, to stay on the surface. If I'm really grounded spiritually, I don't have to spiritually bypass. I actually go right into the suffering, and I lean into it. I'll find the grace in it, and then I'll allow this process of letting my suffering be made into a gift and into a contribution. And I look, how can I help? Like, what can I contribute? And in the midst of all this, like, so it's not that then I don't take any action and I'm just sitting on my butt and saying lal kumbaya, my lord, or something. Like it's like no, I'm very engaged, but not from a should place or an overwhelmed place, or you know what I mean.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like, anything that's dichotomized, I feel like, or polarized, like it's either all is not well or all is well, like that's not the right path. But when you can hold both, be with both, like the suffering that is in this world and even perhaps in your own life, as well as at the same time that all is well, you are held. Like, how do we turn fully towards both? I think that's
beautiful.
Yeah. And so maybe you can speak to, what it is exactly that, because I know we spoke a little bit about it, but this Heartcore program that specifically helps people and supports people in their own spiritual journey towards this place of spiritual grounding, of deepening. And you said too, this full yes to life,
the gift that life is, right? Like the gift that is always there. And the lesson, to me, life is a lesson in love, like many lessons in love, right? Like really. And so Heartcore is designed to have you say yes to that, and see right in your life, like where you are in your particular life circumstances. So there's a teaching every month on a particular pillar of the spiritual journey. Now there's many pillars and I can't cover them all, but I'm taking the ones that I think are really important, right? And then there's a group coaching call where I coach the whole group and people that need support in that moment, and then I also work with everybody individually on their particular journey, like I did with you, right, on a particular, what are you facing, in your spiritual life, but also in everything else, because everything is part of your spiritual life, not just a kind of la la land or mystical experiences or something. Like everything, in the way that I approach this is everything is spiritually, everything is sacred. Like it's like let's get into it. And everything can be a doorway to grace. Every single experience can be a doorway to grace if we recognize it, right? So so I like this combination, and I'm actually like, I'm super excited about it, that it's a combination of receiving teachings, right? Then taking the teachings into your day-to-day life. Like, what does that mean in my life, and how does this apply to me? To that group field, you know, of being together and getting coached together, and then individual attention to each person individually. So, which I don't do individual coaching anymore, right? I haven't done it in a few years now. I just don't have the time for it, and I was missing it, and I was like, how can I do this so I can have both the group and the individual? So this, I really love this.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the Heart Core program, right? And I can speak for myself, is it will take you so deep in your own journey. It gives you a spiritual journey roadmap, so you can know what's happening in your spiritual journey, what's coming up, and how to deepen in it at these different layers. And these teachings are so rich, as well as, even I'll just share briefly, like, you get to do inquiries around it too. So it's like this real diving in of what comes up for me with this. What are the blocks? How do I relate to this? Like a real deep dive internally, so that you can then fully like open to, right, grace.
Yeah,
and
can
so
I say something to that for a moment?
Please.
So yeah, so that's important. So I'm not just standing there teaching something. As soon as I'm teaching is, then we go into like what we call holistic inquiry, which is really like, okay, now, for example, one of the pillars is trust, which is very important to trust, right? Or we can't really open spiritually, if we can't really open to anything if we don't trust, right? So, but where do I not trust? What are my blocks to trust? And where does this come from? And who am I when I'm not trusting? And who am I when I let go and I do trust, right? And how does this, what's that like in my body, in my mind, in my emotions when I do trust? So we're exploring both, right? The blocks to a particular pillar, and then also, how do I cultivate this more trust in my life, right? So yeah, it's a whole holistic program.
Yeah, you get homework assignments too, which is great. So you can like, right, cultivate these pillars in your life. You even get a buddy or someone to go through this journey with. It is, you are so held in going deeper in your own spiritual journey. And again, by this amazing guide, right? That, I mean, y'all know I love Britta. So I'm obviously, like, I just really think, I mean, she's changed my life, right? And I have learned so much from her. And so you get to be guided by someone who has also been guided by so many teachers before her. And to learn about these teachings, to dive into them, to uncover them in your life, and as well as to then get that one-on-one personal support with her too, is, I mean, just to say, like, her one-on-one coaching sessions is worth the whole price of the program. Like, really, she's a master coach. So yeah, and I just think, again, to emphasize and circle back, this is just so needed today, because life is hard today. Like 2020, this is right, what we hear from people has been so hard. And in the midst of that difficulty, it is hard to connect spiritually. It's hard to remember the goodness in life, to be a yes to the gifts in life, to trust, right, when we are faced with suffering. And this is the program that is going to, right, in 6 months, just change your life and how you relate to grace. Absolutely, like 100%, I stand by that. Where again, even it's maybe similar to me, you won't even consciously know how some of these have fully seeped in until you're going through it.
Yeah, just so we can have a basic disposition of trust and yes to life and optimism, you could say, right? And hope, and like hope that is deeper than I'm going to get the expected or the wanted outcome. There's a deeper hope even than that. Like, I'm going to get what I want, or we're going to change, the world is going to change the way I want it to, you know, like, it doesn't always happen like that necessarily, but there is a hope even deeper than the result, right? There's like a hope that can be with anything and still go, yes, right? Like, Where's that in the Oriah Mountain Dreamer poem, like the invitation? He's like, I want to know if after a night of defeat, you can still stand at the top of the mountain top and scream, yes, right? To the moon, right? And go, yes, yes, right? And it's like, what does it take to be able to do that after a night of defeat, right? Like that's where the spiritual journey gets really beautiful. And all traditions point to that. All real, true spiritual traditions with any meat in it, right? They point to that. People, all mystics have known this. So, yeah.
Yeah. So wishing all luck in your own spiritual journey, and just, giving you an invitation if you feel that calling to go deeper. Because, you know, just hearing you speak about hope right now, Britta, it's like, isn't that what our world needs? Is just this sense of like, both turning, again, allowing, even when all is not well, still this fundamental belief that all is well, and a basic hope and trust in like the inherent goodness of life. Maybe just even imagine for yourself, what might your life look like if that's how you related to the world? What might change or shift? So join us.
Join us.
Join us. We'll be going deeper. So you certainly know Britta will. Yeah, just lots of love to you deep souls out there. And thank you for listening to this too.
Love, 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 love.
Bye.
Bye.